In the ancient Gnostic texts, particularly the Apocryphon of John, also known as the Secret Book of John and the Gospel of Philip, we find profound teachings on the fate of the soul after death. These writings, part of the Nag Hammadi library discovered in 1945, emphasize that true salvation, escape from the material world's cycle of suffering and reincarnation, depends on attaining spiritual knowledge, or gnosis, while still alive. Ancient Gnostic texts, especially the Apocryphon of John, also called the Secret Book of John and the Gospel of Philip, reveal exactly what happens to the soul after death. These documents, uncovered in the Nag Hammadi library in 1945, state clearly that real salvation means breaking free from the endless cycle of suffering and reincarnation in this material world. The only way to achieve that freedom is by gaining true spiritual knowledge, gnosis, while you are still alive. Here is the critical truth most sources hide from you. After death, you have a real choice. You can go toward the bright light that appears, or you can refuse it and seek the true divine beyond. Almost all near-death accounts claim the light is pure love, and the only way home. Gnostic texts warn the opposite for the unprepared. That light is often a trap set by the Archons, false rulers created by the Demiurge, the lesser god who built this flawed world. Entering it without gnosis means surrendering your soul. The Archons erase your memories, bind you in oblivion, and force you back into a new body to repeat the cycle. This system keeps divine sparks imprisoned, feeding off our energy through constant rebirth. With gnosis, you see the deception, reject the false light, and return directly to the true, unknowable God. The choice is yours, but ignorance makes you vulnerable. The Apocryphon of John lays out the soul's fate after death with brutal clarity. If you die unprepared, without gnosis, your soul is seized by demonic authorities created by the chief Archon, the Demiurge, the same figure many identify as the Old Testament God. These entities immediately chain the soul, drown it in complete forgetfulness, and throw it violently back into a new physical body for yet another forced reincarnation. Most people today believe death leads straight to peace or heaven, and that following the bright light is the only safe option. Gnostic texts expose this as a dangerous illusion. That light is frequently a deception orchestrated by the Archons to capture souls lacking true knowledge. Blindly rushing into it guarantees recapture, your memories wiped clean, your freedom stolen, and your divine essence recycled into this prison world to suffer again. The system is engineered to keep you trapped, feeding off the energy of repeated lives, but you possess real sovereignty after death. You can reject the false light, demand passage to the true source beyond the Archon's domain, and return to the authentic divine realm. The risk of automatic surrender is immense, yet few teachers warn you because they themselves lack this gnosis. Arm yourself with knowledge now, while alive, because hesitation at death means enslavement. The Gospel of Philip, a central Valentinian Gnostic text, drives the point home. Moral purity alone is not enough. True liberation demands full acceptance of Christ's revelation, plus direct spiritual knowledge gained through sacred rites performed while still in the body. Those who attain the authentic resurrection this way escape condemnation entirely and bypass the Archon's traps after death. Philip links salvation to living in truth, rejecting the illusions of the Archons and adhering to ethical principles akin to divine law, honoring life, truthfulness, and overcoming base desires. Failing this, souls face judgment and entrapment. Many believe avoiding the light is a simple act of rebellion, yet this path carries severe risks rarely discussed. Choosing to bypass the tunnel requires more than intent. It demands absolute spiritual sovereignty. Without the light's transition, a soul risks drifting in the outer darkness, a void where the lack of a physical or energetic anchor leads to fragmentation. Most sources claim you simply walk away, but they ignore the predators lurking in the astral shadows, entities that mimic loved ones or divine beings to harvest the very essence of a confused spirit. If you reject the light without having cultivated the internal gnosis or the robe of light, you remain vulnerable to these parasitic forces that thrive outside the archontic cycle. This middle ground is not a sanctuary. It is a high-stakes battlefield where your mental fortitude is your only shield. To enter this void unprepared is to risk a different kind of eternal stagnation, far removed from the pleroma. Both texts warn that Archons actively detain ignorant souls, stripping memories and enforcing a hostile return to the flesh. This cycle denies you progress toward the higher pleroma. But what does ignorant truly mean in this context? If you are living in the dark, chasing shadows instead of your internal spark, you are already caught. You must learn to spot these signs and break free before the physical cycle repeats and your window of opportunity closes. The danger of this ignorance lies in the false security of the waiting game. Many believe liberation happens automatically after death, failing to realize the afterlife strictly reflects your current consciousness. If you do not develop the eyes to see while in the body, you will be blind when facing the archontic gatekeepers. This lack of preparation is a fatal risk. It leaves the soul susceptible to the magnetic pull of the false light because it has no internal compass. To be ignorant is to be passive, waiting for a savior that never comes while the tools for escape remain unused. Without active gnosis, the soul is a rudderless ship, easily towed back into the density of matter by forces thriving on your lack of awareness. Sovereignty is not granted. It is claimed by shedding every worldly illusion anchoring you to this predatory construct. You must build your internal light now, or remain a prisoner to the shadows that govern the unprepared. This transition requires total mental clarity. If you exit the body without a fixed destination, you risk being pulled into a vacuum where the Archons rewrite your narrative. The void is not a playground for the uncertain. It is a testing ground where only the self-ignited spirit survives. Without the wedding garment of gnosis, your energy is vulnerable to harvest. You must be centered in your own divinity before you step off the grid, or you will find yourself in a wasteland far more punishing than the cycle of rebirth you fled. True freedom demands that you become the light itself before the moment of death arrives. The Gospel of Thomas drives this home in saying 51. When the disciples ask about the coming resurrection and the new world, Jesus replies that what they await has already arrived, but they fail to recognize it. This confirms that the kingdom is a present reality for those with the gnosis to see it. If you are waiting for the end, you have already missed the beginning. You must recognize the divine presence within the now to avoid being deceived by the architectural traps of the afterlife. More explicitly, in contexts echoed across Thomasine traditions, Jesus states that those who expect to die first and then rise are mistaken if they do not receive the resurrection, spiritual awakening, while alive. They receive nothing upon death. Gnosis must be attained now in the body through Christ's inner teachings to the pneumatics, spiritual ones. These apocryphal books collectively assert that accepting Jesus' revelation, his role as the bringer of light and remembrance from the true unknowable God, and living in alignment with moral truth, commandments as foundational for soul fitness, are required before death to avoid hellish stagnation or torment. Hell, in Gnostic terms, is not eternal fire but endless cycles in this flawed creation, or worse, isolation in darkness under archonic rule. For modern seekers exploring Gnostic paths, whether inspired by ancient Nag Hammadi texts or contemporary interpreters like John Lamb Lash in Not in His Image, these teachings offer a cautionary lens on near-death experiences and afterlife narratives. A common motif describes the departed soul emerging into complete darkness, disoriented, confused, vulnerable. Then a tunnel of brilliant white light appears ahead, warm, inviting, magnetic, promising homecoming and relief. The soul, drawn instinctively, feels, "Finally, I'm going home." But ancient and contemporary Gnostic interpretations warn, this light may be the Archon's greatest deception, the next cage in their system of enforced reincarnation, as echoed in modern discussions from researchers like John Lamb Lash to online Gnostic communities exploring the soul trap theory. The pneumatic, spiritually aware, must recognize that turning away from this light without prior gnosis is not true liberation. It leads not to the monad, the true source, the unknowable divine fullness, or heaven, but to a terrifying void, an etheric limbo of stagnation, where lost souls wander in isolation, potentially recruited by other entities in endless chaos. In the Apocryphon of John, the Archon's domain encompasses darkness itself. They detain the ignorant, seizing souls that reject their structured path, the light which permits reincarnation a second chance. Without the passwords, seals, or established gnosis to ascend through the 7 planetary spheres they guard, the soul is stripped of memories and forced back harshly, or trapped in a dark, non-physical realm, recruited by other wandering entities into deeper chaos, unable to progress or return. The white light, though a control mechanism of the demiurge's realm, offers the unprepared soul continuation, reincarnation as an opportunity to re-embody, realign morally, and seek Christ's revelation anew. Adhering to foundational truths, like the Ten Commandments' calls to respect life, honesty, and reject desire, prepares the soul for this revelation, fitting it for ascension. Jesus' crucial esoteric teaching to his inner circle: the time to choose the monad is now, embodied. As the Gospel of Thomas warns, delaying resurrection until death yields nothing. Raw consciousness post-death is fragile, peering into the void, intended by Archons as a false shortcut to true heaven, becomes an inescapable snare. They desire souls to fear and reject the light, plunging into chaos where chances for liberation vanish. Your true preparation must happen now in this life. Cultivate gnosis through knowing and accepting Christ, live ethically in alignment with divine truth, and awaken the divine spark within. If ascension eludes you in this incarnation, the light, imperfect as it is, remains the only structured path for another attempt. Rejecting the system unprepared ensures darkness claims you utterly, not as a secret door to freedom, but as eternal loss. The Archons thrive on the fear of their own construct, but those who recklessly dive into the void lose even the mercy of the cycle. You face a profound freezing stagnation that may require extraordinary repentance as a lost soul, or even direct intercession through the prayers of the living, just to earn another chance at reincarnation and eventual ascension. The risk of the void is an absolute erasure of the self, for those lacking the internal flame. While the light is a trap of the Archons, the darkness outside is a predatory expanse that consumes the fragmented spirit. You cannot simply walk away without a destination. To do so is to become a wandering shade, vulnerable to parasitic entities that feed on the essence of the uninitiated. This state of suspension is not liberation. It is a spiritual vacuum where time ceases to function, leaving the soul in a state of perpetual paralysis. Most mentors forget to mention that the void requires a level of mental mastery that few possess. Without the wedding garment of gnosis, your energy signature is unprotected and easily harvested by the very forces you seek to escape. You must be centered in your own divinity before you step off the grid of the archontic world, or you will find yourself in a wasteland far more punishing than the cycle of rebirth you fled. Attain gnosis while alive through moral alignment, absolute truth, and inner revelation, to transcend these cages entirely. The true light waits beyond their illusions in the pleroma, but only the prepared can pierce the veils. This is the narrow path between the false light of the Archons and the devastating vacuum of the void. If this resonates with you, and you are finally awakening to the divine spark within, drop a comment below. I choose the monad now, enlightened through Christ.